This will be a step-by-step tutorial of the answer key to the homework that you did last night. Now what I want you to do is I want you to check each question, and if you see up at the top, if you look right now, number 1 has a 16 next to it in red and number 2 has a 5/2 in red. Those are the answers. If you got those answers, you can skip to the next slide and again look at the top in red. All the answers will be in red. If you got the right answers, skip to the next slide, and so on. If you didn't get the right answer, listen to the tutorial. All right, so let's look at number 1. Number 1 is an absolute value. We're integrating from -4 to 4, so we're finding the area under the curve from -4 to 4. So you can see here that we have 2 triangles, and you can also see that these 2 triangles are the same size. They're going to have the same area. So really, if you want, what you could do is just integrate from -4, let's just say, to 0, which would be the triangle on the left, and then we can just double our answer. So we have 1/2 the base, which is 4, and the height, which is 4. So that area will be 8. And again, if we just want to double that answer because we know the area of the triangle to the right of that y-axis will also be the same thing. So there is our answer of 16. All right, now number 2 is a little bit trickier because we have to be very careful of where this function hits the x-axis. And if you recall, I said in the last video, what you essentially want to do is take what's inside that absolute value, set it equal to 0, and you will see that the 0 for 2t minus 1, the absolute value of that, will be at 1/2. So what that basically means is this is where your absolute value is going to hit the x-axis. Now, then from there, what you would do is you would plug in -1, you would plug in 0, and you would plug in +1 to figure out the y values for those respective x values. So at -1, when I do plug that in, I'm going to get 3. So at -1, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that I do know that my graph is going to look like that. And then I'm going to plug in +1, and when I do that, I get 1, and the rest of my graph is going to look like that. So essentially, I have this triangle right here, and I have this extremely tiny triangle right there on the right. Alrighty, so I'm going to start with finding the area from -1 to 1/2, and that will be 1/2 the base, which is 1.5, which I'm going to write as 3/2. Okay, and the height, which is 3. That ends up being 9/4. And then I'm going to take that area from 1/2 to 1, and I'm going to do 1/2 the base, which is just a teeny tiny 1/2, and the height, which is 1. So then that ends up being 1/4. And again, both of those triangles are above the x-axis, so we add those. So the total area under the curve, or the integral from -1 to 1, will be 10/4. And if we reduce that, we're going to end up getting 5/2. Let's look at the next one. So now, in this case, you were given a picture, and be very careful with this one because it's asking you to integrate, but be very careful because it's asking you to integrate. Look right, whoops, hold on one second here. Look right here. It's asking you to integrate just from 1 to 6, not from 0 to 6. So be very careful that when you are doing this, that you are looking just at this space right in here. Okay, and then we're going to look at this triangle that's underneath the x-axis, and then we're going to look at this triangle right here. All right, so we're going to find the area of each space. So I'm going to start by looking at the integral from 1 to 3, and that's a trapezoid. So I'm going to do 1/2 the height, which is 2, the bottom base, which is also 2. Hold on, is that bottom base 2? Yes, 1, 2. Plus the top base, which is just a 1. Okay, so then if we add that up, we're going to get an area of 3. and we'll multiply. All right, next what we're going to do is we're going to look at the integral from 3 to 5. Now this is a triangle, so 1/2 the base, which is 2, times the height, which is 2. And that is going to end up being 2. Now we need to be very careful here. I'm going to put a star because that space is underneath the x-axis. We're going to end up having to subtract. All right, lastly, we're going to look from 5 to 6. And that is also a triangle. So we're going to do 1/2 the base, which is 1, and the height, which is 2. So the area there is 1. All right, so here we go. So we are going to take the area from 1 to 3, which is 3. We're going to subtract the area from 3 to 5 because it's below the x-axis. And then we are going to add the area from 5 to 6, which is 1. So your final answer is 2. Miss Carter made a boo-boo. Okay, so let's just go back here. The answer is 2. Oopsie. All right, let's look at the next one. Now this one you had to be very careful of because you need to know what this is a picture of. And let me refresh your memory. If we have x squared plus y squared equals 9, you should recognize that that's a circle with a radius of 3. Now watch what happens. When we try to get the y by itself, we would move that x squared over by subtracting. And then to fully get the y by itself, we would plus or minus, and we would take the square root. Oh, doesn't that look familiar? So if you look here, that looks very familiar, except that the plus or minus is missing. So really what this is asking is just for the positive part of the circle. And in that case, or I should say in this case, that's going to be the part of the circle that rests on top of the x-axis. So when we're drawing a picture, okay, I'm not going to draw a beautiful picture, but you'll get the general idea. We're going to be just looking at the half circle that's on top of the x-axis. So this space right here. Alrighty, so the way we do that is by taking the area. So we have 1/2 pi r squared because it's only a half a circle. And if you notice, the radius is 3. So we're going to take that and we're going to square that. So your final answer will be 9 pi over 2, or 9/2 pi, however you wish. Alrighty, number 5. Now, this one you really had to plug numbers in. So I plugged in -4, then I plugged in -3, then I plugged in -2, then I plugged in -1, so on and so on, all the way up to 4 for those x values, and found their corresponding y values so that I could get a picture, because I wasn't really sure what this one looked like. So I would look at this as 3 separate spaces. Now I do want to show you, I'm going to skip one of those spaces. Look at this right here. Both of these triangles are the same size. So again, we can find the area of one of those and just double that, but do keep in mind that they're underneath the x-axis, so we're going to end up having to subtract. And then we're going to look at this little one here in the middle. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by integrating from -4 to -1, and I will do that by taking the area of the triangle. And if I look at that space 1, 2, 3, the base is 3. And the height is also 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the area of that triangle is 9 over 2. However, understand that that is equivalent to the integral from +1 to +4. So they're the same size. So I'm actually going to double that. And then we will end up getting an area of 9 altogether. But I'm going to star this because that area is underneath the x-axis, so we're going to end up having to subtract. All right, next I'm going to look from -1 to +1. So I'm going to take the area of that little triangle, and I see that the base is 2 and the height is 1, so the area is 1. So then I'm going to do 1 minus 9, which equals -8. And again, I'm subtracting because the area of those two triangles is underneath the x-axis. Last one. Now the last one, you are actually given an equation of a piecewise function. You needed to graph that piecewise function. So it said that the equation of the top part of the piecewise function, was 3x when x was less than 2. So you can see that I have that diagonal line starting at 0, 0 and going all the way up to 2, 6. And then it said the second part, or the bottom part of the piecewise function, was y equals 6 when x is greater than or equal to 2. Now we're only going out to 3, so I'm just going to drop a vertical line down there. And essentially what this one is asking is to find the area of that space right there. Everything's all above the x-axis, and it's only one shape, so it's just going to be 1/2. And then I'm going to take the height, and I know that the height is 6. And I'm going to do the bottom base, which is 3, plus the top base, which is just 1. And then when I go ahead and I do that, I end up with 12.